Yo, what's going on, guys? It's Houston Sports Talk back into the video day. Into the Miami Dolphins beat the Atlanta Falcons 20-13 in the preseason. Even though no starters are playing in this game, the Miami Dolphins still looked pretty good in this preseason game, winning 20-13. Let's go over this game. So we're going to start off with the scoring summary. There was, quite a bit of scoring in the first three quarters of this football game. You saw a total of 33 points scored in the first three quarters, but then no points scored in the fourth quarter, so final score 20-13. In the first quarter, the Dolphins kicker, Jason Sanders, starts off very impressively when the Dolphins only have a 6-play, 10-yard drive, which ended off with a 58-yard field goal for Jason Sanders. That'd be really good for Jason Sanders in the regular season. I think he's made some kicks around that range. You know what? His career high might be exactly from 58, but if not, it's around the area of like 56, 57. But to make a 58-yarder in the preseason, your first kick in game action, I think that'd be impressive to do in the first regular season game. But the first preseason game, it's even more impressive. Jason Sanders, it's not like he's a bad kicker, but he's not a guy that you can every kick expect to go out there and nail and drill a 58-yarder. I don't think there are a lot of guys that you can expect to do that besides Justin Tucker, maybe. I would say Jake Elliott, but I don't know if you could really expect him to go out there most of the time and nail a 58-yarder. But there are a couple of kickers in the NFL. Maybe you could say Harrison Butker, that are like that. Jason Sanders is not one of those kickers. He's a good kicker. He's just not an elite kicker. But to nail a 58-yarder in your first preseason kick, I find that very impressive. But and the kicker he's facing today, I think he's one of those kickers that you could probably say is a guy that you can maybe expect to go drill a 58-yarder most of the time, and that's Younghoe Koo, who we'll go over right now because that was the next score. Younghoe Koo knocked in a 39-yard field goal to make it 3-3, and that was with 5 minutes remaining in the first quarter. Then the Falcons scored a touchdown. Carlos Washington Jr. with a 1-yard touchdown run, and Younghoe Koo would make the extra point. It's 10-3. Skylar Thompson, after an interception, would throw a 6-yard touchdown pass to Jeff Wilson Jr., and then Jalen Wright, the Tennessee guy, who I will get into because he had an impressive game, rookie, who was drafted 120 by the Dolphins, had a 6-yard touchdown run right before halftime. Jason Sanders with the extra point. It's 17-10. And then speaking of Koo and Sanders, the third quarter was all about them because with 12 minutes remaining, Younghoe Koo would advance the deficit, would take the deficit from a 7-point deficit to 4 when he would knock in a 53-yard field goal, and it would be 17-13. And then Jason Sanders would knock in a 46-yard field goal to make it that would make it 20-13 back to a 7-point lead. Game leaders, how about the rookie Michael Penix Jr., the 8th overall pick? Put on a show, 9 for 16, 104 passing yards. Loved the performance in his preseason debut. This is not a start where you say, oh, we're going to bench Kirk Cousins because of this. I don't think there's anything that Penix could go out there and do and make the Falcons say we're going to bench Kirk Cousins after the contract they gave him. But at the same time, what Penix can do is the better he plays in the preseason is the more confident that the Falcons are to potentially, feel comfortable to use him if Kirk Cousins were to go down. Now, I know that might not sound great, but it's great to have trust for a rookie quarterback, and I think he's showing that early on with what we've seen from him in this first preseason game. But not just that, but, if potentially, this is potential, if Kirk Cousins, this season has an okay year, nothing special. Let's say the Falcons potentially make the playoffs, which would be good for the Falcons, but they only get to the wild card and they go down in the wild card. maybe the Falcons, if Penix Jr. has a very good preseason, and they decide that, okay, maybe we get rid of Kirk after only one season, and Penix Jr. is our quarterback in 2025. That could be an option. I think he'd have to continue to play well in the preseason if he's not getting chances in the regular season. But we'll see what happens. I think it's going to be very interesting. Obviously, Penix is not going to become the starting quarterback right now. I don't think there's anything he can do in the preseason that's going to change that. But I think what he can do in the preseason can matter on how much they trust him moving forward, and how much they might trust themselves by potentially giving the quarterback job to Michael Penix Jr. earlier. That's not this season. I don't believe that's this season unless Kirk goes down, which I don't think any of us want to see happen. But at the same time, if the Falcons don't have a great year with Kirk Cousins at quarterback and Penix Jr. is doing a great job, or does a great job in preseason, which he did in the first game. We'll see what he does in the next two. And he's great in practice throughout the season as the season goes on. That could change the Falcons' decision going into the 2025 season. So he looks good, though. 9 for 16, 104 passing yards. Now, Skylar Thompson, someone who looked not great, but looked okay. 8 for 19, 95 passing yards, 1 passing touchdown, 1 interception. He can play this whole game. Mike White also played at quarterback for the Miami Dolphins. Rushing yards for the Atlanta Falcons, Jace McClellan had 9 carries for 30 rushing yards, while Tennessee rookie Jalen Wright, who looked spectacular, I got to watch him a couple times last year in Tennessee. He had 10 carries, 55 rushing yards, 1 touchdown, looked great. Falcons wide receiver Blair had 2 receptions for 45 receiving yards, while for the Miami Dolphins, Tanner Connor had 3 receptions for 70 receiving yards. Let's go over some other stats that I want to go over. Mike White threw for 14, 26 passing yards. If you want to go over some other Falcons quarterbacks, not that very active, but Nathan Roque had 37 passing yards, throwing 3 for 13. Well, Taylor Heineke threw 4 for 11 for 11 passing yards. Other rushing for Atlanta, Carlos Washington with a bunch of carries, 16 carries, 25 rushing yards, 1 touchdown. And that was really it. Well, for the Dolphins, outside of Jalen Wright, who was fantastic in his first preseason game, Chris Brooks had 12 carries for 40 rushing yards. Malik Washington had 1 carry for 21 rushing yards. The quarterback, Mike White, showed off his legs with 15 rushing yards and 5 carries. And Jeff Wilson, who scored a receiving touchdown, had 5 carries with 7 rushing yards. And even Skylar Thompson ran 6 yards. So total of 100 yards for Skylar Thompson today on the pass and rush game. And he played, I believe it was the first half only for Skylar Thompson in this game. Now, you don't see a lot of passing yards for Miami because they were running the ball a lot. 35 carries for Miami, 144 rushing yards compared to Atlanta's 30 and 81. I mean, neither team's passed the ball a lot in this game at all. All right, let's go over Miami's receiving outside of Tanner Connor with 3 receptions for 70 receiving yards. Jeff Wilson Jr., who is their, I guess you could say, third string running back outside. He's their best running back outside of Devon Achane, if you look outside of Devon Achane, and I can't remember their other running back. If you look outside of their 2 best running backs, the next best running back is Jeff Wilson Jr. Jalen Wright might be changing that, but we'll see who gets that third string running back, whether it's Jeff Wilson Jr. or it's Jalen Wright. But Jody Forston Jr. had 1 reception for 12 receiving yards for Miami. River Craycraft had 1 reception for 11 receiving yards. And then let's go over for Atlanta a little bit. Casey Washington had 3 receptions for 27 receiving yards, while Jesse Matthews had 1 reception for 15 receiving yards. Fumbles, there were 2 fumbles lost for the Atlanta Falcons as Gwynn lost a fumble. Chris Blair also lost a fumble. These fumbles were recovered by Miami's defense. Sarin Neal recovered one of the fumbles. Also, the other fumble was recovered by Isaiah Mack for the Dolphins defense. And also, 2 fumbles lost for the Falcons by Gwynn and Chris Blair. All right, defensive stats. Falcons tackle leader was Jaden Price with 7 tackles. The Falcons didn't have a single sack in this game, but they had 6 tackles for loss. Well, the Dolphins only had 1 sack in this game. That 1 sack went to Channing Tindall. They had 7 tackles for loss. 1 interception for this game, and that is Kevin King who gets the interception, picking off Skylar Thompson, and he would return it for 29 yards for Atlanta. Let me know your thoughts on the game in the comment section as the Dolphins beat the Falcons 20-13. That's it for the video. Hope you guys enjoyed, and peace out.